You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing.
Hello and welcome back to the Yin and Yang Show. Thanks for joining us again this week. I am Lindsay and I am excited this week because not only is my dear friend Brian Signorelli with me, but an even dearer and an older friend is with me. I've met her so long ago, before even Brian Sig. Trish Bertuzzi of the Bridge Group and author of the Sales Development Playbook. What? This is awesome.
That's exactly how I say it too. This Development Playbook.
Yeah, you have to. It's very deep. It's a fantastic book too.
Yeah.
I could read it before. Finding myself now in a sales role in my organization, I need all the help I can get. So, Trish, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Trish is
happy.
happy. She loves it. She's an inbound speaker as well at Inbound 17 this year. So anybody who's coming to HubSpot's Inbound this year, look for Trish's session on account-based revenue. Dun, dun, dun. So this week,
I'm sure it'll be a toss-up between me and Michelle Obama. You know, who should I see? Trish, Michelle Obama, Michelle Obama. I don't know.
Actually, quick side note on that.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama is absolutely cleaning up this year because I saw that she's actually one of the keynote speakers at Dreamforce as well. Said she can just, keep knocking down the keynotes with like HubSpot and Marketo and Salesforce and, the list can go on. She's just going to be cleaning up. I said, I gotta figure out how to be the first man or something so I can get speaking gigs.
Well, I'm sure Hillary's bored with Bill, and she's probably looking for a new man, Sig. So, work it.
Yes, exactly.
Oh dear.
Yeah, all right.
Where do we go with that? I think your lady fair.
Good words of advice.
Yeah, your lady fair may be upset. However, she's one smart cookie though, and she may have a shot there at being the president, and you can be the first man. But we digress. But it's always fun.
We got time.
So we brought Trish with us today because inside of our industry, my industry, the office technology space, there's been a lot of discussion around building internal sales teams and what that might look like with HubSpot, building an internal inside sales team. And Trish is here today to talk to us about really what is involved in building an inside sales team. And the difference between an inside sales team and an inbound sales team. So I kind of want to open it up. Trish, talk to us a little bit about when you're working with folks as an inbound sales expert. What are some of the things that you help them build from a foundation perspective?
So first, let's talk about laying the foundation of language, because the term inside sales is such an umbrella term, and even inbound has become such an umbrella term that I want to make sure everyone understands where you're coming from. When people talk about building an inbound sales team, the way my brain translates it, it says, okay, you are generating a ton of leads. You are a commodity sale at a low price point, and you need a team that can potentially do a one-call close. That's an inbound sales team, Trish brain, right? So when people say, I want to build an inbound sales team, and they don't have a commodity play, I'm like, you probably want to build something a little bit different. You probably want to build a team that takes your inbound leads and converts them into opportunities and maybe hands them off to an inside sales person who would then close them. So it's really important that you understand your sales cycle, your sales process, your average deal size, your buyer type, before you even talk about building either of those organizations, because it matters. The variables matter. And that's what you have to remember when you're looking to build a strategy.
Okay.
So Trish, one thing, that I think has been floating around inside the walls. One thing that's been floating around inside the walls of HubSpot a little bit, for example, is that inbound is, in a way, and I'm sure you've heard, Brian and Dharmesh speak about this a little bit too, is that inbound is becoming kind of more of a philosophy rather than a way to describe even marketing or sales, for example, and that it's more about this approach to always prioritize the buyer's needs ahead of a sales rep's needs, for example, or even a company's needs. Curious to get your opinion on that, and obviously working in the field and your team working in the field with so many clients. Interested to get your opinion on the extent to which that actually plays with business owners and heads of sales, or if they do view it more the way that you do, which is an inbound sales team really is just working that inbound demand from all those leads and really selling it, kind of in a commoditized product environment.
Well, I think there's two answers to that question. First of all, hats off to Brian and Dharmesh for building the whole inbound movement. Having said that, do I think it's a philosophy? I think that's a stretch. And I don't think they're the first ones to say you got to put your buyers first. So once again, inbound being that really confusing term. If inbound sales means commodity, one call close. The other side of the coin I talked about, which I call sales development, hence the book, means you get an inbound lead. It might be, if it's right company, right guy, and you're not a commodity sale, you need to engage with them. That's a way that's relevant. You show empathy, you add value, and you arouse enough curiosity that they go to the next step in the sales process. So I think you really, once again, you really have to understand your buyer, your market. Like, for instance, I sell to CROs and CMOs. I also publish some of the best research on the planet on the topic of inside sales and sales development. My guys typically aren't the guys that go download. I use HubSpot. I get a ton of leads. I have to figure out how to say that lead is an arrow to opportunity. Now I'm not necessarily going to call the person who downloaded. I'm going to go call that CRO. So you got to think it through. There's no cookie cutter approach to all of this.
Fair point.
Yeah.
See, and I love that you said that if those aren't the people that are downloading the CROs, because, it's a similar challenge, I think, in a lot of different industries where somebody else is doing that research and making sure that you're reaching the person doing the research on behalf of a CEO or a CRO, making sure that you have that on your website with a path and a journey is really important in today's buying cycle. So I'm really glad that you said that, because we do have that challenge a lot. We're like, no, you have to go for the decision maker. You have to go for the decision maker. Not when you're focusing in inbound strategy the way that we typically are. So, and I think my audio is all over
a little bit.
Places. It's still pretty bad. Okay, I'm going to let Brian do a lot more of the talking because you guys sound fine for me.
Okay.
Sure. So yeah, Lindsay, if there's questions that you obviously wanted me to just kind of chime in with, feel free to just shoot them right through the chat pane. But I guess, Trish, back to your point about, the difference between kind of an inside sales team versus an inbound team that's working just that inbound demand. If a business is generating some level of inbound interest, do you have any insight or advice for a CRO or a CEO that's maybe saying, well, how do I know how to structure my team? If I'm getting 100 leads a month versus 1,000 leads a month, like what's that kind of tipping point where I say I should have an inbound sales team only working those and then passing off to an inside sales team versus I should have inside sellers, assuming I'm working in an inside sales environment, or that makes sense for my business, and say, you know what, we don't actually need an inbound sales team. We just need our inside sellers to absorb some of that inbound interest and work that. And once we grow up to a certain point with that inbound demand, maybe that's when I should kind of start forming a team. Any insight you might offer there?
I'm going to say it again, variables matter. I even have a sign right there. Variables matter. There's no one approach to how you should do this. Here's the variables you should think about when you're thinking about any sales or marketing strategy. Just off the top of my head, do you have brand and name recognition in your market? Yes, leads you down one path. No, leads you down another. What is your average deal size? There's a huge difference in a strategy for a 2K product versus a 200K product. Who are you selling to and how easy is it to get at them? If you're selling to the SMB and you're selling to decision makers, way easier to have conversations with them than it is if you're selling to the CRO of a $50 million technology company. How complex is your product? Are you selling to innovators and early adopters, or are you selling into the laggard market? That matters too. So there's so much you need to think about before you throw resources against it. And those are just top of mind, some of the variables that you have to think about.
Okay, so for some of those variables, let's take a combination of them.
Okay.
So, let's I'm trying to, or I guess maybe the question actually is what would be one combination of those variables where you would say, having an inbound sales team makes sense, whereas, actually you can't rely on, inbound leads. You actually have to kind of go out and do kind of more hunting or account-based selling, or targeting. What are some of the guardrails, or what's that combination of variables, of the four or five or so that you just shared, where it might make sense to go from one end of the spectrum versus the other?
This is like a really hard pop quiz, you guys. I mean, this is what I get paid for doing, right? All right, so let me see if I can think about this. So I have great brand and name recognition in a vertical or verticals where I have fabulous case studies, great use cases that an inbound sales team can articulate, a well-defined, repeatable, scalable sales process, and my price point is under X. Hell to the go for inbound sales, right? Okay. All your stars are in alignment.
Okay.
Different scenario. I have no brand and name recognition. I do know who my ideal customer profile is. And by the way, when I ask you what your ideal customer profile is and you tell me companies with over 50 million in revenue, I'm going to punch you in the head, because that is not an ideal customer profile. That is a huge pond in which you are to swim, right? Mm-hmm. So to understand it, your ideal customer profile gets very, very specific. And I'll tell you, especially if you're a small business with limited resources, those who focus are those who win. Couldn't say that enough. And by the way, if you haven't read Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, which was written in the 80s, go get it, read it, embrace it.
Yeah, there was actually, I was reading an article yesterday. I frankly can't remember where I was reading it. It might have been something on Medium that referenced Crossing the Chasm.
Love it.
And basically said, the way you scale is by doing things that don't scale early on, which, to so many, at least startup owners, like, that might be very counterintuitive, but the kind of essence of the point was, the more niche and focused you can make your offering early on, the better you're actually going to, or the higher the likelihood that you're going to start getting that kind of product market fit and that traction. And then once you figure out how that actually serves that one group, you can then start figuring out how that applies to more and more people over time. And I think that's absolutely right. And I can speak from personal experience, having tried to start a company and terribly failing at it, for a variety of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that we certainly went too broad in defining who our customer was early on. We didn't solve for a very specific group of people, and I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, it's such a critical success factor, but people are in a rush to market, and then they also look at our customers. We closed a deal over here and a deal over here, and I'm like, forget the anomalies; they're going to happen anyway. Mm-hmm. Get real focused on your sweet spot. Figure out what it is as quickly as possible. And a great way to do that is to use an inside sales or sales development team to test different verticals. I'm a huge fan of A/B testing for verticals, for ICP, for buyer types, for messaging. But if you're going to test it, you have to set up a really rigid test process that you can actually measure. So, yeah.
So, in the two scenarios, just in case anyone listening to our show had missed this, the two scenarios I think are the two combination variables but I think you articulated very well, and I took notes on. You said, look, if you are in a place where you have great brand and name recognition, you have great use cases for your products or services, you have a well-defined and repeatable sales process, and your price point, I think you said, was under X, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Exactly. So basically, it's like you kind of really got great fit. You've got great use cases. People understand who you are. I think what you said was go inbound sales.
Yep.
Drive that demand in and just close, or bring that customer demand through the system.
Put the meat in and grind the sausage. Just go.
Exactly. Where on the flip side, you're saying, look, pick up a copy crossing the chasm, because if you don't have that fit, you've got to figure out how to get kind of focused in and get narrow. And so I think that's a great reflection point for, again, any, head of sales or CEO, that might be listening into this, to really reflect on that and kind of think through where exactly, kind of give yourself that look in the mirror and say, where are we really at this point? And depending on that, that's going to dictate some of your sales strategy going forward.
Yeah. Can I make one other point about that?
Oh, sure, of course.
So the other point, if you're a business owner, right, another variable, and this one's a tough one, but another variable you should be considering is you need to look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I a vitamin or am I an aspirin? Am I a nice to have? Everybody knows they should take vitamins because they're good for you. Or am I a need to have? I figure, I fixed your pain right there. I'm going to fix your pain. Understanding that is one of the things you think about is huge. Huge. Because if you're a vitamin, you got to throw out a bigger net. You got to find those people who are like, yeah, man, I need to be better. I need to take those vitamins. But if you're an aspirin, you can get super specific and you can use a get in, get out strategy. Hey, I'm talking to you. Poke, poke, poke. Feel pain? No, gone. Right? So you're not trying to convince them they feel pain. You're trying to find the people that have the pain. So really hard question for entrepreneurs to ask themselves, but will serve you well in the long run. Really interesting points, a very fine line. Having been a sales rep at HubSpot, I personally was more of I don't mean this in a sadistic way. It just, I always gravitated to being a pain-based seller. Just because I felt like the conversation, just because one, I think that's where I naturally gravitated. Again, not because I'm being sadistic about it, but it's just that I felt like I could have such better conversations with people when I truly understand what they were struggling with, and kind of trying to mutually create some sort of a solution, or at least kind of help them understand what a solution or set of solutions might look like, to get out of that painful state. Now, you could argue too, depending on the, again, coming back to your point that variables matter. Depending on the business you're talking to or the person you're talking to, the business, you could argue that HubSpot is a nice to have potentially. And there are people that did a lot more opportunistic style selling, or I don't know, you might call it dream-based selling or vision-based selling or something along those lines. But I think that it's a great point to really think through for your own product or service. Yeah. Are you a vitamin or are you an aspirin? Nice to have versus need to have. Well, let me tell you what HubSpot did, because I was one of their first customers and we still use HubSpot. So with any technology, there's a and then a right. So what they were really brilliant about was they created a movement around inbound. They didn't just go out and sell technology. They created a movement, and they were such marketing geniuses that everybody drank the Kool-Aid. We're like, give me some of that orange Kool-Aid. Sure tastes good, right? And so that was their. Now, like anything else, technology adoption life cycle, competitors came into play. They had to change the message and do more value-based selling. So I still think they're kind of riding the bottom of the crest of that wave that they created. But, it reminds me of the movement that's going on right now. Like John Miller, right? One of the founders of Marketo, he created a marketing automation movement, right? He's doing it again with Engagio. One of the reasons everybody's talking about account-based whatever is because of John Miller created a technology and then created the movement to sell the technology. It's fascinating to me. Fascinating. But I digress, sorry.
No, I think it's an excellent point. I mean, it's something I've always been fascinated by. I mean, I was a customer of HubSpot's before I worked at HubSpot and still work at HubSpot. And I absolutely got wrapped up in that kind of concept and movement. And part of it for me, personally, was that I had tried every kind of sales and marketing tactic that I could find on my own, and nothing seemed to work. And then I felt like the clouds parted, and it was two guys. It was I don't know if you know them, but Mike Redboard, who's now a C-level in our services team, and a guy named John Marcus, who's gone on. He went on to found a company called Bedrock Data. And anyway, so those were Mike was my inbound marketing consultant, and John was my sales rep. And I don't know, just the way that they talked about things, and the way that they, kind of showed me a path forward, even the way that they sold to me without selling to me.
That's the best.
It was the best. I mean, because there were so many conversations I had before where, someone would get on the call and say, okay, so like, tell me about your role, and like, what do you do? And okay, and how much budget do you control? And, why do you need this solution? When do you need it by? And it was all this kind of them. But, I think one of the first questions that someone like John asked me was something to the effect of, tell me about what's going on. And why do you feel like that's happening? And it was just so kind of open-ended. And
I love it.
And then I just gushed. I'm like, oh, well, I've tried this and that, and this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and I don't know why, and we can't figure this out. And then and he just, tell me more.
Well, Sig, I think that's a great point for your audience, is that, once again, there's no one way to do anything. And I think we have to, like BANT, everybody knows what BANT is, right? BANT is so dead. It's so dead. It's rotted. Even its bones are gone, right? Buyers don't want that anymore. Right today, the hardest part of the entire sales process is what I call getting to engagement. Any monkey can close a well-qualified opportunity. You just keep asking the right questions to the right people, right? Mm-hmm. But because we've inundated our buyers, right? I say content is the new spam. If you think content is going to lead your inbound strategy, wrong, right? It's the new spam. We have boring, banal messages. We've automated so much that now we're just like, how many emails do you get every day? How many voicemails do you get? We're like this. No. Like, talk about building a wall, right? I think Trump helped people build a buyer's wall. They just don't want to have anything to do with us anymore. So I think that's the harder part of the sales process right now. So you have to be innovative. You have to rise above that noise, and having those kinds of conversations are what's going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm experiencing that. I joke with people. A couple of my team members will come over to me and they'll say, hey, your phone's ringing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't pick up my phone anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm like, I just don't. I mean, cell phone, work phone, even the emails and it's everything. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's there is like my I like the way you put your hands up. It's that, like, my stop filter or like back off filter is getting almost, stronger by the day.
Yeah.
And it is harder, I think, to actually get to that point of that initial kind of engaged conversation or relationship.
Yeah.
Trish, I know we've only got about maybe five minutes left or so. One thing I wanted to chat a little bit about is we do have a good number of people that listen to the show that run copier dealerships.
Okay.
And copiers, arguably, I'm not sure that the CEOs or business owners of these dealerships would necessarily agree with me, but I think by and large, copiers are somewhat of a commoditized space.
You think?
I would say so. I don't want to, I feel like
that's not insulting.
I feel like saying commoditized is insulting, but I love commodities. I mean, I love pork bellies and salt and all that stuff. So I mean, I can't get enough of commodities. Anyway, so to those business owners,
yeah,
I guess would you confirm, based on the fact that it really is kind of more of a commodity-based business, would you confirm that inbound sales or setting up an inbound sales team is the way to go? Or if you were to maybe chat with or I guess maybe offer a piece of wisdom to someone running a copier dealership that is in that commoditized selling environment, any words of wisdom or thoughts that you might share with them?
I'm not going to say they're words of wisdom because I don't know enough about their market, but
Sure.
My impression would be if I have a copier, I'm just going to use it until it breaks or until I go, God, I wish I could do this with it, right? So to me, copier selling is timing and lighting, right? I need to show up when you're like, I hate my copier. Oh, jammed again. So to me, you have to be in front of your audience, your really well-defined audience, all the time, so that the minute they're like, they're like, ooh, I'm gonna call that guy. You know what? He stayed in front of me. He didn't harass me. He's giving me good information. I'm gonna call him. So it appears to me, once again, not the expert, that timing and lighting is a strategy for those people. So you got to figure out how to do a combination of marketing and human outreach so that you're the first person they think about when they want to think about a new copier.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's one thing that it was certainly a light bulb moment that went off in my head when I think 6 years ago or so, when I was kind of learning about the concept of marketing automation and lead nurturing. Was kind of just understanding that just because someone isn't ready to talk with you today or be a customer of yours today doesn't mean they're not going to be a customer or want to talk to you 3 hours from now.
Yeah.
3 months from now.
Yeah.
3 years from now. And there are plenty of, I can speak, personally to, again, having been a rep and a manager, I'd say probably in the ballpark of, not personally, but across, the teams I've managed, probably hundreds of deals have been from people that are kind of just slowly nurtured over time. And so that it's really, it's not about selling someone right then and there when they pick up the phone and you kind of got them right in the moment.
Right.
It's about saying, am I the company that comes to mind when the prospective customer or buyer thinks about their problem again? Are they associating their problem with my brand?
There you go. That's what it's all about. Their problem, your brand.
Right.
You got it.
Trish, I just want to say thank you very, very much for joining us, and apologies for a little bit of the audio back and forth. Lindsay, I feel so terribly that you haven't been able to chat too much with us because you did so much work getting this all set up for us today. But it was awesome to get to meet you, Trish, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Lindsay, do you want to try to do the kind of outro, or are we just going to kind of wrap up today? Head nod up and down, yes, no. All right. Well, I'll do the no audio, so I'll do the outro. So until next time, keep talking.
You've been listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Join us online at yinandyang.fm.